Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of India's Truth. Today with us again is our good friend Colonel Wilkerson. For those who didn't know, he was also Chief of Staff of for General Powell. He was Secretary of State. And Colonel, I have got to ask you, uh, have you ever seen such chaos and insanity on the diplomatic front as we're seeing right now with Donald Trump? From I agree with Putin too. I agree with the soy boy band that came rushing in the next within a few days. And now we're into we'll provide air cover, I guess, close the skies over Ukraine, and when they send the troops in, oh, and we're going to invade Venezuela, and all
I
that in
think
one day.
I think it's ill description to say that there's a diplomatic event of happening. It's chaos. It's a circus. The circus is composed of, as most three-ring circuses are, a center ring with Trump in it, who occasionally appears, and then there's two flanking rings, one with Rubio in it, who is supposed to dash back and forth to the center as the national security advisor and never does. And then there's one over here with Hegseth, who is disappearing so fast that this morning I heard he's out.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Yeah, I hadn't seen him
pretty,
around lately, but
oh, pretty
yeah.
good source too. It had
Whew.
something to do with the whole combination of his Christianizing the Pentagon, because he has really turned these prayer meetings and things into something that lots of people are objecting to. Even some of the uniformed people are objecting to, and you have to really be bad to get them to object to what you're doing. They tend to go along to get along. And I also heard that his mismanagement of certain things has really gotten even to Trump's attention. So
Hmm.
I don't know that that's valid, but I hear someone said to me this morning, remember you made a prediction Hegseth wouldn't last 6 months? Well, you're going to get your prediction fulfilled.
Wow. Well, speaking of Haxeth, as a little side conversation, his big thing was, I'm going to clean up the cadre. And I know from my personal experience, I've seen a lot of, I couldn't call them, they're not soldiers, they're politicians and ass kissers that get past. I've known two one-star generals, General Hayden and General Griffin, who were soldiers generals. So I think both of them, I know Griffin had been a Marine, enlisted Marine before that. But
Right.
every other general I ever saw was just a politician in a uniform. But has he actually done anything about that?
Well, this is a phenomenon that really began about the last year of Powell's chairmanship when he was chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, 1993 into 94. And it began in spades for me when Powell received a telephone call from a senator, Chuck Hayden, who happened to be Hagel, who happened to
Mhm.
be a good friend of his and would later be one of Obama's secretaries of defense. And Hagel said to Powell, and this is Powell debriefing me after the phone call, I've got a list in front of me here. It comes across, every year or so of people that we are supposed to pro forma more or less confirm as 3 stars from 2 to 3, and then more important from 3 to 4, and then even more important than that, those 4 stars we would earmark for unified command, you know, Pacific,
Hmm.
Indian Command, European Command, and such, and for service chiefs. Those are the premier jobs, head of the Army, head of
Right,
the Navy,
right.
and so forth. Um, and I don't see a single person on this list I would vote for any of that. What's happened, Colin?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and he and Colin had a lunch after that, a couple of them actually, and the general told him what we had done to ourselves, particularly in the Army, where of course the general had the most experience as a service member. But I mean, he'd been chairman for 4 years, and he'd been national security advisor and deputy national security advisor, so he'd seen a lot of the other flag officers in the other services. And he said we've all done it to ourselves, and his rationale was our personnel systems have become run by our personnel systems. And so the people who get promoted are the people who shouldn't get promoted because the personnel systems protect them. and they protect the personnel system.
Oh yeah, yeah,
And I think he was right from what I saw at that time too. He had a better vantage point to look at it than I, but he said we've ruined it, and I dare say we aren't going to have, except by serendipity, pure luck, a decent 3 or 4 star in the future for some time until we correct this.
yeah. I remember I guess it was 2001 or 2002. I can't tell the exact date. Thankfully, I had a maroon beret at that point, but the army morale was low, so the brilliant tacticians and strategists in the Pentagon came up with, "Hey, let's give everybody a black beret,
Yep.
and that will solve everything."
Yep. Powell hated that. He absolutely hated it. He said, one, I don't look, he said, I don't look good in a beret. And
And most people have no idea how to wear a beret, so it
yeah,
just looks like a bunch
that's
of
right.
crooks walking
That's
around.
right. You need an hour-long class on how to wear the beret before you even put one on.
Oh, you got to shave the beret too. You got to, and not
Yep.
too hard because then you go right through the material. You just got to
Yep.
get the foam off the top.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember taking care of my maroon beret, you get it just right.
He had a story for that too, and it encompassed such things as that. He said the first thing every Army, he picked on the Army at this point, every Army chief of staff does, once he realizes in the first 6 months that he really can't affect anything of importance, is he changes the uniform.
Yeah, I noticed that. Yeah, that did happen a lot. Oh,
The only
that,
ones who don't do that are the Marines. And he looked at me because he knew I'd served with the Marines for 4 years. And he looked at me and he said, "Why do the Marines don't do that? All the other services do that to a degree. Army's the worst. Why don't the Marines do that?" I said, "Because they've got beautiful uniforms. Why would
yeah,
they
they do
want to
have good
change?"
uniforms. I've got to give them that. They got spiffy uniforms. That is the truth. Well, I mean, Army dress blues are pretty nice, but I wore them like once a year, I think, on
Well, now they're
dance.
in them all the time, of course.
Yeah,
That's a standard Class A uniform now.
yeah, yeah. Oh, my greens I wore twice, one for inspection and one for the photos, the officer's photo every year. That's
Yeah.
it. Paid money to have that. Basically just collect. And they're still hanging my closet. My wife's like, "Why don't you get rid of them?" I'm like, "Nah, you can't do that. Sorry, dear."
That was
It just.
that was me too till I got to the Pentagon, and then I wore them all the time. But mine are
Well,
still hanging there too, looking at me like, "When you die, can you get in these for your coffin?"
I can still fit into mine. I can honestly say I'm one of my most of my friends, they were used to eating a 2.5, 3,000 calorie a day meals. And well, we exercise all the time. You run around, you're doing
Yeah.
infantry stuff, fun stuff. And when they got out, they stopped the exercising, but they kept eating just as much.
Yeah.
And you see photos after a year, they call you like, "Jesus, man, who ate you? Or who did you eat?"
Is this the same person?
Faces just plump out like, "Damn,
Hmm.
exercise, exercise." Nah, I'm done with exercising. Yeah, but you're not done with eating.
Yeah,
Scary,
it is.
scary.
It's a problem.
But just I mean today Venezuela. So now they went from ostracizing Maduro to screaming that he's importing drugs in the U.S. Never mind that almost all U.S. major banks are living off drug money while we're at it. And now they're moving three AGS destroyers and 4,000 Marines toward Venezuela.
Nonsense. We were talking this morning with a group of us were talking about a number of things like that. But one of the things we were talking about was the terrorism list, which I, as chief of staff of the State Department, used to have to vet every year. And one of the things I always did was call the White House and say, "Why is this country on there? Why is this country on there?" They don't sponsor terrorism to any event that we should have them on the list. It's political. It's political. Well, we got to talking about that, and then the greatest state sponsor of terrorism, for example, in the Levant is Israel.
Oh yeah,
There's no question about that, especially
absolutely.
now. If you look at the definition of terrorism, um, and we talked about Maduro, and we talked about heroin out of Afghanistan, which is really on the East Coast, bad back here. We talked
Hmm.
about fentanyl. We talked about cocaine. We talked about the source countries, and nowhere in our language or in our checking of the data did we find that Venezuela was very powerfully involved in the drug business. Colombia, yes, but not Venezuela. So we started thinking, we're not stupid. It's the oil. It's the oil, dummy.
Yep.
And then we started checking on Charles Koch and his refineries because Charles owns the exclusive rights, as we understand it, to the refineries in Texas in particular. I think there's
Yep.
one in Oklahoma too, that refine that heavy sulfur oil out of
Hmm.
Venezuela.
Yep.
And of course, we all know it's got the greatest deposits of any country in the world if you discount the fact that it's that heavy sulfur oil.
Yeah.
So, our conclusion was, hey, we want his oil and we want to get rid of him so we can get his oil. The way we've gotten
Yep.
his oil in the past is we get that guy in there who's going to be our man, who oppresses the Venezuelan people, of course, because you have to be the dictator that is necessary. But he's allied with us, and so we like him, and he gives us his oil.
He's a
So
bastard, but he's our bastard.
he's our bastard. Yeah, exactly. And that's the way we've treated Latin America for 100 years.
Oh yeah. Well, it's funny because the heavy sour crude only comes from three places: Venezuela, Iran, and the Russian Urals. So Iran
Mm.
is obviously out of the picture. The Russian Urals, Lady Graham over there once. Well, speaking of terrorism, he's been pushing to list Russia as a terrorist country. That way, there will never be talks of any kind of peace.
Oh,
So,
geez, I thought we already had Russia listed as a terrorist
oh,
country.
actually, yeah, it actually hasn't come through because then it blocks all peace talks forever, or
and,
at least
and
until it
Putin
comes
is the
off.
master of terrorists.
Oh, no, wait a minute. I thought he was falling apart. His economy was dead, and and he's died like 15 times from every disease known to man.
Yeah.
Oh, and he's about to take over the world any minute now,
Any myth that will fit, we will throw it that way.
and all in one sentence.
Yeah. The ironic thing about it is 9 times out of 10, when we throw those kinds of epithets out there, or those kinds of descriptions or curses, insults, whatever, they'd be better thrown back into the mirror.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah. Yeah. What gets me though, Venezuela's mobilized its reserves. I mean, I know the quality of the troops isn't the best, but the quantity plus the terrain. Do you think Trump would be insane enough to just get himself a new Vietnam going? Because I don't think they're just going to roll over.
This morning on another podcast, I got a question about what we're going to do with regard to his comments about sending the military out to fight drugs.
Oh yeah.
Fentanyl in Mexico, the cartels in Mexico, other places.
Hmm.
And I have the same answer for that. We've been doing that for years. It's just he's taking the wraps off.
Hmm.
We've had the CIA, MI6, Mossad, that triumvirate that now runs the empire. We've had them all around the world in what I call paramilitary operations. And that gets the CIA and the other intelligence groups out of having to report their actions to their oversight committees, because what they do is they plan it all, they fuel it all, they fund it all, and then they shift it to the paramilitary forces, which in our case are, special operating forces,
Hmm.
basically. A lot of Delta, a lot of SEALs, a lot of Rangers. They go out there and they do these things, and they don't have to report to their oversight committees because the Senate Armed Services Committee and the House Armed Services Committee ain't about to ask them about what did you do in Colombia last week.
Right.
So
Right.
the CIA gets a get out of jail free card every single direct action operation, and the military gets its boots in the country and kills people. That's the latest way they do work.
Yeah. And nobody ever votes on by the Constitution.
No,
You know,
no,
why declare war when you don't have
that
to?
that that's our since we got rid of Eric Prince, that's our Wagner group. Only it's official. It's unofficially official or officially unofficial.
Yeah. I applied at one point when I got out of the military. I applied for Blackwater. Yeah, Blackwater. By that point, well, fortunately, I guess they were only taking former SF, and I'd been armor and infantry, so they didn't take me. They so I didn't have an SF background, and then
You didn't
my
know how to
wife.
you didn't know how to eat snakes.
Yeah, because that's needed. My wife we had a hell of an argument after she found out I did it anyways. Because I mean $30,000 a month tax
Yeah, I know.
free. That's in 2 months, I'm making basic a little less than what I was making as a captain in a year,
Yeah,
as a captain promotable. I'm like, geez. Um, but then within 3 months, that incident with Condoleezza Rice at the intersection where they killed 18 people and shot up another like 30 or
right.
40. And then the drug running, the rape of that one American woman they were holding in a container, and just it all poured out. I'm like, whew, missed that bullet. Thank God.
Yeah. I actually found out that of the 33, I think it was, and at one point they had the groups doing these studies had pushed it up to 38 people that we killed, actually killed, murdered in our torture program. Six of them were done by special forces.
Mm. You
Most were
mean,
contractors to the CIA or CIA people. But I mean, what is the ultimate torture? Homicide? We did 33 if you believe the lower figure, 38 if you believe the higher figure. I think the 33 figure is pretty damned accurate because I've seen the analysis.
mm. Yeah, yeah, that was a mess. But
I mean, a
and,
lot of people have killed a lot more people in torture programs. There's no question about it. But they don't go out and brag that they don't torture people, for one thing.
yeah.
And I mean, in the Philippines, look at what we did in the Philippines. Teddy Roosevelt actually sent a telegram to the brigadier general, I think it was, in the Philippines, who at the time he read the telegram, according to the book I read, at the time he read the telegram and read it to some of his men, they were putting the last dirt over the trench in which they had just killed about 100, 200 Filipinos.
Yeah. That was what
Teddy Teddy had to retract that, by the way,
did he?
because the papers got a hold of it. President congratulates general for murdering Filipinos.
Yeah, that's not a good title. That's bad for re-election. And I'm saying that with like total sarcasm, that's
But that was a long time ago. We're supposed to
yeah.
have learned something since, particularly since Nuremberg and the establishment of the Geneva Conventions and prisoner of war treatment, Convention 3, I think it is, prisoner of wars.
Hmm.
We just seem to have now decided that all of that was passe, that we don't have any room for that anymore. Certainly Israel has decided that.
Oh yeah. Well, come on. Any country that we had to kill that one guy, so we took out 1,000 or 2,000 people that just happened to be in the way in the building they were living in,
Yeah.
and one shot. Uh,
Oh, we had two children, two little girls, two little boys, and a wife, a grandmother, and an uncle and an aunt. Well, they were in the way.
yeah, yeah. There's the Lancet had said on that issue. Lancet had said, well, of course, this was about half a year ago, that there's about 200,000 people that are probably buried under Gaza, under Lebanon. Well, particularly talking about Gaza. But then there's another report that came out that the population has shrunk by 400,000
Yeah.
as an estimate. Now, some of them may have gotten out and be in Egypt, but the majority, I mean, people, children starving to death. I mean,
Well,
that's
our Army has a very sophisticated tool. The tool, I like to say the tool was developed because we got sick and tired of Air Force pilots telling us that the BDA was this, and then later we would check and the BDA was a lot less.
oh yeah,
They didn't kill 300 people, they killed two,
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
but we got this tool now, and I'm very, very sure, I'm almost confident that it's been augmented with AI. Now, I don't know that because I haven't seen it or used it, but I can't believe that they haven't done AI with this because it would fit perfectly.
Hmm.
And they've done it with Palantir's business, the Mosaic business,
Yep, yep.
3,000 data points into a drone so that the drone can select the person to kill. So I know they're putting that into this. And this system takes every parameter. It takes the rebar, the concrete, the macadam, the whatever the
Hmm.
density of people is, whatever the distance between buildings is, whatever the type of building. It takes all of these factors, puts it into the cruncher and crunches it, and then says what's the population, how close were they, all that kind. That comes out about 175,000.
I mean,
And you
that's
know what
just,
the Israelis are going to do? They're going to plow over all of those people,
yeah,
build settlements above, and that will be their grave.
yeah. Well, no, no. Trump's planning to build casinos there.
Well, that'll be their grave then. They'll
Yeah.
be in the basement of the casino.
Yeah. Well, the ghosts and the bones in the
Yeah.
basement.
I mean,
Oh,
it's not like this hasn't happened before, but just like in the Philippines, they just pull that trench and fill. Where was the place in World War II, the really bad one, Baba Yar, was it, where they
yeah,
killed
Baba
all?
Yar.
Yeah.
And you know, brainwashing. I have a friend of mine living in the U.S. Uh, he's a Russian Jew. He's living in the U.S. and his family as a whole came over there, and they are originally from Kiev. They lived in other places, and he and his brother-in-law got in an argument because his brother-in-law, when the revolution of Gidness, of honor, justice, whatever they called it, when they overthrew the elected government in
Mhm.
2014 in Kiev. So they started doing this propaganda that it was Russian soldiers that shot all the Jews in Baba Yar, not Ukrainian nationalists with Germans' oversight. And people started to believe it. Jewish people started to believe it who grew up in the Soviet system. And he got an argument with his brother-in-law because his brother-in-law, this is a grown man, comes over there. Yeah, it was the Soviets that did it to blame the Germans. Like, are you insane? And he believes it because I don't know why, but and people, you look at, and I know his brother-in-law. You think he's a rational actor, but no, it's and it's the insane asylum. Just the doors open up and there you go.
I've heard that story too. In fact, I read a book of fiction not too long ago, which was set fiction, but it was set in the World War II years. And that was the great secret that kept weaving its way through the text, was that the Russians had done it rather than the Germans.
Yeah, the Russians were busy trying to hold Kiev and fighting their way out. In fact, quite a few of the Jews that survived in Kiev survived because they evacuated out with the Red Army as they're fighting their way out. So, yeah, it's insane. It's the rewriting. I'll tell you this. I was on a project in Turkey in 2020, and I was watching on a British channel. I was watching a documentary about World War II from the British perspective, and this is the wording they have for the fall of Berlin. And Allied forces took Berlin. And what do they show you? They don't show you Red Army tanks. They show British moving forward. So if you have no idea, you don't know history. And Allied force, and there's the British Matilda driving forward, and British infantry. Yeah, who took Berlin? Okay, and it's the same thing as they do in Japanese books. They say, Hiroshima, Nagasaki was bombed, and the Soviet Union that moved into the Karelian Islands, stuff like that. That's the next thing. It doesn't tell you who, so students that don't know, okay, the Soviets bombed Japan, and they
Yeah.
actually believe that. It's the Soros and company. They went into the history book business back in the 90s,
Well, yeah.
very very effectively.
I was doing an analysis at the Naval War College of the German counteroffensive in the Ardennes, 1944, 1945. Started at 5:30 in the morning on 16 December, real snowy, cold morning.
Hmm.
And we call it the Battle of the Bulge in short. But as I did that, I wanted to see just exactly how Eisenhower reacted in terms of the greater scheme. And so the first thing I found out was there was a wired telephone conversation with Bradley back in Spa, Omar Bradley back in Spa, who was playing bridge at the time, because he didn't trust any of his Division G2s up on the front lines,
Oh
who
wow.
told him they were hearing tanks in front of them. Tanks in the Ardennes? At this point, the war's going to be over by Christmas. I mean, we all know that. So that's bullshit. Plus, it wasn't confirmed by Ultra. Well, the first thing I found out was that Hitler restricted Model, and Model restricted the entire group to bicycle, motorcycle, car, any means, carrier pigeon, but they could not use radio because Hitler had figured out Ultra existed and that we were
Ah.
listening to his conversations. So Bradley's back here playing bridge, being a fool, 200 nautical miles behind the front lines. And Eisenhower is, trying to deal with Churchill at that time. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, they're going to break through. They're going to take the largest number of American prisoners prisoners in American history, 16,720 or something like that, in one fell swoop. Took a whole division, the Golden Lines, took them all prisoner, just like that. They were National Guard. They'd just been put on the front line. They'd only been there 2 weeks. So it took them all prisoner.
Yeah.
At this moment, I'm thinking to myself, what's Eisenhower thinking about who's going to get to Berlin first? So I went and checked some maps, and I wanted to see where, after that incredible burst of speed that carried them about 400 miles, where the Russian army was at that time. And I could only find a figure that I trusted for January the 7th, I think it was. So we're 16, December, the attack starts. It doesn't really get reasonably stabilized by Bernard Montgomery, which a lot of people don't know because he was pulled in and put in charge of the defenses. It doesn't get really stabilized until towards the end of January. And I'm thinking, okay, where are they? Right here. They were 200 miles from Berlin and moving like a blitzkrieg.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, okay, Eisenhower saying to himself, the map of post-war Europe is determined,
Oh
and
yeah.
I'm not going to do anything about it.
Yeah.
And he couldn't. He couldn't. I mean, I'm not sure he had the forces to anyway, but a race to Berlin and going in there and fighting the last remnants of the German army would have cost a lot of casualties. But the Bulge, 78,000 casualties,
Mm.
more than Douglas MacArthur had in the entire Southwest Pacific campaign in World War II.
Yeah.
Eisenhower had in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
He almost got relieved.
Wow.
He
Didn't know
almost got
that.
relieved. If it hadn't been for Churchill weighing in for him, which explains a lot of why Eisenhower later, as president, would be against the coup in Iran in 53 until the British got to him.
Mm.
And once they got to him, he was an Anglophile, pure and simple. Let's face it. He'd spent so much time there. He fell in love with Kate Summersby and was going to marry her until General Marshall told him, "You marry her and get rid of Mamie, and you're out. You're gone. Forget your army career." So he made another decision, but that had so many implications that ripple through. That
Yeah.
one thing. Hitler didn't know what he was doing. he,
Yeah.
he wanted Antwerp. He wanted to bust through, get Antwerp, take that port, and then plea for an armistice deal. Kind of like World War One ended.
Mm-hmm.
And he came pretty close. I mean, it was a gamble, surely, but he came close. But he certainly came. He kept the Americans from being the principal party in Berlin.
Yep. Yeah, my two of my grandfathers were in that direction. One of them was a colonel, tank forces, and the other one, interesting enough, was a well, the one that was a colonel. Call him a grandfather is really my great uncle in English, but he's the brother of my grandmother. And then the other one, who's the husband of my grandmother, he was a German who. German aristocrat who became an officer in the Polish horse cavalry when he lost everything on cards. But he was a surgeon, so he had to feed the family somehow. So he
What a
joins the
victory!
army. Yeah, yeah. Gets taken POW by the Soviet forces, sits a year in the POW camp, and joins the Red Army. His first wife, she was Jewish. She got killed in the camps, and his son, my uncle, was taken out of the Warsaw Ghetto by nuns, raised by nuns, and then they found him somehow because his last name had changed a little bit just in rewriting. Nobody knew if he was alive, and then he's a Soviet citizen, went through the war, and they found him somehow like 7 years later. It's amazing because no computers, right? And
Mm.
hey, you want your son? And he's already got my grandma, got my mother, because he's remarried. And I'm like, but he was an ethnic German, and he served out in the Red Army to the end. So yeah,
Yeah, we forget that there were a lot of cross allegiances, if you will. People
oh yeah,
serving with the Soviets, people serving with the Germans, people serving with the Poles, and vice versa. And
oh yeah, yeah,
after the war, there was a lot of settlement going on.
oh yeah, yeah. That's I
They're
think Europe.
still in France. They still talk about the resistance. I remember you.
Yeah. Oh, I think Europe's going to be looking at that after the Ukrainian war because there's going to be a lot of people settling debts on
Yep.
every direction.
Yeah.
Do you
That's
think?
one that's one of the nasty things wars do for you.
Do you think anything's going to come out of? Okay, it looks like the what Putin and Trump discussed seems to be going derailing because now Trump is back to what the Europeans want. You
Yeah.
think there's any chance any of this is going to go forward anywhere, or
Well,
are we just going to?
I think we did get one clarion result from it if he doesn't unwind it, and I don't see how he can because he's been pretty adamant about it. And that is that the ceasefire's out. There's no ceasefire. And I can just imagine Putin looking at him and saying, "Okay, here's Napoleon, and he's won the entire campaign, and he's just ready to cut the enemy's throat in the capital city, and he wants a ceasefire." And now
Wait, time out.
the enemy in the capital city whose throat's about to be cut, he wants a ceasefire.
Oh yeah, yeah,
So Trump finally understood it. And so ceasefire's out of the question. We're going straight to a peace agreement. Anything further than that, I think he's already started to unwind.
yeah. Well, it makes no sense for the Russian side. I mean, so we're going to freeze the conflict while you rearm, and what's in it for us?
Yeah. And he's got examples of that all the way back to the beginning in my administration. But certainly he's got examples of that with Minsk. And, that was a pause to let Ukraine get more ready for the juggernaut.
Yeah, yeah. That's well that yeah, I hope at least we go from that. But it seems, the Europeans are ever more hell bent on widening this, making it as wide as possible.
It does. And I said this morning on another podcast that I think Merz and Macron and Starmer in particular, but other leaders too, following in their wake, so to speak. I think they're all going to be gone very shortly. I don't think any of them are long lived because I think their people are going to understand eventually what's going on. You know, I know people don't believe me, but in 2002, I was there when we started buying governments. We bought newspapers, we bought editors, we bought reporters, we bought politicians, we bought people who would be Jens Stoltenbergs.
Hmm.
We bought people to change, and we didn't do it the way the CIA did it in Chile, for example, in
Hmm.
68, 69, and 70, and turn them all against Allende. We didn't do it for that reason because we disguised it. We disguised it by weaponizing liberal democracy.
Hmm.
And we sent in non-governmental organizations. We sent in U.S. aid. We sent other people in. We call them quahogs, some of them, quasi-government operations.
Oh.
We sent them in, and they had a mission, and they didn't even know why they were carrying out their mission in many events. Their mission was to democratize these people and to democratize them in a way that would make them want to be members of NATO.
Ah, yeah,
And
yeah.
so we reap this. We reap this all. People ask me, why would a country that had a years and years long history of neutrality, think the Scandinavian countries, for example,
Yeah.
even Norway, yeah, okay, in Tromsø we had some Marine POMCUS and things like that, but not a member of NATO, not officially a member of NATO. Why would these countries come in? We bought them. We got them in, and then we put the fine cap on it. We created Ukraine to make them grow increasingly fearful of Russia because we knew when we created Ukraine in our image that Russia would find that unacceptable and eventually would attack. And they did. And so then we said, but Joe Biden got this one,
Yeah.
oh, he'll take Lithuania next and Estonia and Latvia and then Poland. You know, we did this. We did this. History books will show that we did this 20, 30 years from now.
Yeah. You're right. You're absolutely right. Which, yeah, the unfortunate part. You're absolutely. But it's such a thing. Russia asked to join NATO 3 times.
Yes.
Stalin was the first one, and then Yeltsin, and then Putin.
Well, I was there in 93 and 94 with Powell and H.W. Bush, actually 92 and 93, and a little bit of 94 till Clinton decided he was going to do the other thing. And we were talking about Russia being an observer at NATO's political meetings and then the military meetings, and then being a member, a full-fledged member of NATO. I mean, that was the plan. And all of a sudden, with Clinton in his first year, he was a disaster. Don't ask, don't tell had to be done, and all that mess.
Hmm.
And a young staffer, 23-year-old woman in the White House, Barry McCaffrey was a general, I think, a 3-star at the time, very well decorated general, was treated very cursorily in the White House. And so that got Clinton a really bad reputation over at the Pentagon really quickly. And so it was really tense that first year that Powell was chairman. Then we had Somalia, and we had to
Oh,
retreat from
yeah.
Somalia. And so Powell goes out of the door recommending to the Secretary of Defense, Les Aspin, how to handle Bill Clinton, because Bill Clinton was the person who said no to everything they asked for in Somalia, like more AC-130s,
Hmm.
which were really feared, really feared.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah,
they were
yeah.
they were P bringers. Adid did not like AC-130s,
Mhm.
and Aspen fell on his sword and took the blame himself, and later committed suicide because Clinton
Yeah.
released him. But those were terrible times, and Clinton didn't know what he was doing, and all of a sudden it all fell apart. Bill Perry, his second Secretary of Defense, leaves because Bill was a major advocate of dealing with Russia as an equal. I took my Marine Corps seminars to Bill Perry's office 3 times. He would give us a couple of hours. The third time I took him, he'd just come back from Moscow, where he'd met with most of his counterparts and others in the Russian defense establishment. And he said, it's working. We're going to have a terrific relationship between a new Europe and us. And it's going to include Russia as a full-fledged partner. 6 months later, he's walking out of the administration because Clinton had done his deal with the expansion of NATO, and military contractors got together and said, "Oh yeah, wonderful idea, Mr. President. Expand NATO. We can sell F-16s to Poland." It was terrible. It just went like that. It went right off the hill just as soon as Clinton became president.
Well, sir, we are about out of time. We've got like half a minute left. Thank you. Thank you for the conversation. Keeping up with keeping up with the chaos that is the Trump White House.
Well,
Uh,
we're two old soldiers. We waste time talking about war stories.
yes, and it's fun. It's very fun. But you build all your politics off that because it
Yeah,
all grows off that. That's the foundation.
yeah, yeah.
Thank you everyone for joining. Anyone has questions for Colonel Wilkerson, leave them in the comments. I'll pass them on if you have any questions. Sir, thank you very much.
Really.
Look forward to having you back again.
Take care.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye bye.